And welcome back to Capitol Tonight. So after weeks of endless political ads, public opinion polls, candidate forums, and debate, the end is finally in sight. In 1 week, a new slate of statewide officials will be elected, and we will find out whether the Democrats manage to hold on to their slim majority in the state Senate. But until then, the pontificating and prognosticating continues. And of course, nobody does that better than my next guests. You will know them very well by now. I will tell you who they are anyway. Steve Greenberg is a pollster for the Siena Research Institute. In another life, he served as press secretary to two former Assembly speakers. He is also president of Greenberg Public Relations. And across the anchor desk, you find Bob Bellafiore. He just recently joined the charter school organization National Heritage Academies. His past life, the one we know of, included a stint as press secretary to former Governor George Pataki. Gentlemen, thank you always again for being here.
The past lives that we know of?
Well, I just don't know what kind of past lives that you had. I'm just saying. I can't even get your name right, Bob, so what more can we do?
Join the club.
All right, yes, right. But we spell it correctly. Let's start with you, actually, Steve, because you've got a poll out today that is pretty interesting. It is not good news for Scott Murphy.
No, in the 20th Congressional District here in the Capital Region, stretching up into the North Country and out down into the Hudson Valley, we have Chris Gibson, the Republican challenger, with 51%. Scott Murphy, the incumbent Democrat, at 42%. So a 9-point lead for Gibson, when 6 weeks ago, the last time Siena looked, we had Murphy up by 17 points.
Okay, so what happened here was that he lost the independents, which of course is that swing block, right?
Two things happened. One is he lost independents. Murphy had a big lead among independents, and now Gibson has a small lead among independents. But also, Republicans went home. And I think this is a lesson for Democrats across the state, no matter what they're running for, who have Republican support or had Republican support. 6 weeks ago, Murphy was getting 1/3 of the Republican vote. 1/3 of Republicans were voting for Murphy six weeks ago. Now it's down to 18%.
See, here's the interesting thing. What Steve is saying, that Republicans went home, but they are not staying home, which speaks to that enthusiasm gap. It's all coming down to GOTV.
Well, they may be staying home with Gibson, and when you see, which we see a lot in this market, you see the advertising, the advertising against Murphy that Gibson's running and that the Republican National Congressional Campaign Committee is running. They're very bread and butter Republican issues. It is, they're accusing him of killing jobs with his vote on the climate change bill, and they're killing him for his vote on the health care bill. It's something that's going to raise people's taxes. I just saw an ad on the news tonight that related to how much everybody's property taxes were going to go up, calculations because of Murphy's votes in Congress. So they're beating him up on bread and butter Republican issues, and they're ones that Sandy Treadwell couldn't communicate when he ran last time, and John Sweeney certainly couldn't communicate when he tried to defend the seat against Kirsten Gillibrand. So they're coming home for a reason.
Well, but those ads also, let's be careful, and it's actually an interesting topic of conversation. Those ads, some of them are coming from outside the state, paid for by independent entities such as American Crossroads, which is Karl Rove's outfit.
As I understand it, there's at least 6 different groups running IE or independent expenditure ads in the 20th Congressional District hammering Murphy. You have the NRCC hammering Murphy, you have the DCCC hammering Gibson, you have Murphy and Gibson advertising themselves. This race is costing a fortune, and you can't live in this district and watch TV or listen to radio for more than 3 minutes without seeing 2 Murphy or Gibson commercials.
But the fact of the matter is that what they're hammering Murphy on are bread and butter Republican issues, and if you want to know why Republicans are coming home, that's the reason.
You know, what's also interesting, though, is that Politico had this story, and New York is one of the Slaughterhouse 5 states that they sort of dubbed us. 11 districts in play. 11. Okay, what is our enrollment? 2-to-1 Democrat? I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, it is, but you got to also put that in perspective. Look, 12 years ago, in 1998, the congressional delegation from New York was 18 Democrats, 13 Republicans.
True.
Today, it is 26 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and 1 vacant seat. So Democrats over the course of the last decade have stolen a lot of seats that are Republican majority enrollment and that Republicans feel are their seats. They see this as the year to go back at those seats and bring them back. The irony, though, Bob, on what you were saying about jobs and bread and butter issues, a year and a half ago when Scott Murphy won that special election against then Assembly Minority Leader Jim Tedisco, he won it on the issue of jobs.
He won it on the stimulus vote.
But he also won it on jobs, about how he as a private businessman had created jobs. Now they've turned that around on him and said, yeah, you created jobs and moved him across, out of the country.
Right.
Whether right or wrong, I don't know the merits of the argument, but it's interesting that he won on jobs and he now is trailing because of jobs, as you point out.
What Murphy has realized is that it's a lot easier to run for office when you have no record. Now that he's got a record, he has to live with it, and they're nailing him to every negative piece of the record.
And we should, before we leave the topic of Congress, you should just say that you're going to have some more congressional polls coming out tomorrow, which is really pretty interesting. I'm looking forward to that.
We'll have 2 more tomorrow, the 19th Congressional District, Congressman Hall down in the Hudson Valley, and the 24th Congressional District, the Mohawk Valley, Utica area, Congressman Arcuri. Then on Thursday, we'll take another look at the North Country District, CD 23, with Congressman Owens.
Okay, so...
And I will tell, I'm so glad Election Day is Tuesday. I mean, there are a lot of things I can't wait to stop seeing. One is TV ads. I can stop getting phone calls. We don't answer our phone at home anymore when it's an 800 number because we know it's a pollster. I hung up on 3 of them this week already because...
Don't you want to help your friend Steve? I mean, I don't understand.
Well, no, I know when Sienna calls, it's not an 800 number. It says Sienna Research.
It says Sienna Research.
Okay.
The polls I don't participate in are the ones where they say, we're calling from American Research Institute. Because I figure that's a front group for a campaign and they don't want to identify themselves.
Right.
So I'm not going to play in that. So I can't wait to have those stop. I can't wait to stop seeing the TV ads. And I can't wait to stop getting the direct mail. But I'm not looking forward to seeing Steve's polls in my inbox every other day.
Yeah, me neither, actually. But here's the more important thing, arguably, when it comes to the congressional races, is really the state Senate. And so we'll kick it over to you. I mean, what are you hearing? I hear from both sides, our internals show me that we're going to be up. Our internals show me that we're going to be up. We're talking again about polling, of course. Now, the internals are... you take them with a little bit of a grain of salt because you pay your Republican and or Democratic polling firm to do them for you.
No, actually, the internal polls you want is like going to your oncologist. You completely want the truth. You want to know exactly what's going on from your internal polling. Now, they may only be, they're trying to characterize them positively for the press, but you really need to know what's going on because that's what the polling is the basis for all your campaign strategic decisions.
So what do you
not
think?
to mention in these final weeks, the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee, the Republican Senate Campaign Committee are making decisions on where do we pull money out, where do we put money in.
The Democrats spent $5.4 million in like a 2-week span.
Right, but they're making those decisions on which races to spend money on based on their internal polling. So I think Bob's right. What I have a problem with are those phony polls that candidates on both sides of the aisle do to put out publicly to help with fundraising, to help with momentum or whatever. Those are not done for strategic campaign purposes. The ones the 2 Democratic and Republican Senate campaign committees are doing now are real polls.
And those are the ones you never see.
Right. So what's going to happen in the state Senate?
I think you can make a very plausible argument either way. I do think the Democrats are going to be hurt by the AEG scandal and the slot machines in Queens and the bidding scandal around that. I think that will create a problem because it just reminds voters of Albany's dysfunction. I mean, the Democrats who run the Senate have been trying to get people to ignore that and try to pin it on the Republicans.
George Pataki said a really interesting thing today. He was campaigning for Anthony Cuomo, who is not Cuomo, Como, actually.
As in Perry.
As in,
like the lake.
Right, but actually none of those things. He's in Queens, he's a former New York City councilman, and he's running against Joe Adabo, who's the Democrat.
Right.
And George Pataki endorsed him, and he said, I'm making an appeal to all those Democrats who crossed the aisle for me. 1 million Democrats who crossed the aisle for me, go back across the aisle, and the Democratic leadership has failed you, and come back to the Republican Party and create a balance of power again in state government. It's a pretty compelling argument, actually.
No, I think what's happened in Albany, what people are realizing in these Senate races, and what people are realizing nationally, is that one-party rule doesn't work, no matter what party it is. George W. Bush was not successful when Republicans controlled both houses of Congress, and it's very hard in Albany when there's only one party in charge. It's very hard for a governor, and it's very hard for the legislature to get anything done when they're all the same party.
And I think what we saw is for the last 6 months, if not the last year, Dean Skelos has been making that argument. The Senate Minority Leader has been making that argument, checks and balances. I think the AEG situation and the report from the Inspector General gave a life...
A Democrat.
And appointed by a Democratic governor, right? But I think that IG report gave life to Dean Skelos' argument, which didn't carry a lot. I mean, people it sounded too philosophical. It wasn't a real argument. Now Dean Skelos has a real argument to be made on checks and balances.
But it's a question of is it coming too late? Is there enough time to make a
I
difference?
also question. I'm also wondering how the Republicans are using it, in the sense that, to me, it's a perfect argument to use against an incumbent Democratic senator. But I heard, for example, that the Republicans are using it out in the Elise seat out in Rochester against Mary Wilmot, who's the Democrat running for that seat. To me, this argument doesn't carry a lot of weight for a challenging Democrat who wasn't part of the process, who wasn't in there.
But the problem with that, of course, is that the people who were most involved, for example, Democratic Conference Leader John Sampson, Senate President Malcolm Smith, Antoine Thompson, he could be in trouble, right? But he is named in that. He's out in Buffalo. Those other two guys have safe seats. I mean, it's difficult to get rid of. I don't even know that Sampson has a challenger of any merit.
Right, but you know, from a campaign tactical point of view, you want to try to get the opponent to say something to distance herself or himself from the party leader, and what they're saying is give back any of the money that was given to you through these guys, which is a hard argument to make.
I think that's a hard, I do.
But the simple question of do you stand with the leader who made this decision or not is an attempt to sort of barnacle the other candidate to the corruption.
Right, but I think it's easy for Democrats who are challengers, probably even for incumbents, but certainly for challengers, to distance themselves from the Senate leadership and say, I mean, we've had a couple of Democratic candidates, Kaplowitz in the Libel seat, have said, I will not vote for John Sampson for leader. I will not vote for Malcolm Smith. That's fine. I just think it's hard for I think it's hard to convince voters that somebody who wasn't there is connected to the problem.
Okay, one more tactical thing. If Mary Wilmot is talking about Aqueduct and John Sampson, she's not talking about the issue she wants to talk about.
No question.
Like jobs, for example.
No question. I agree with that.
And Alessi's record, so it keeps her on her heels, keeps her on the defensive, and that's the strategy there. It's a full court press.
You know, what's also going to be interesting is, of course, regardless of somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose, we could actually have some cliffhangers. We could end up in court on some of these Senate races. There is going to be a lame duck session. It will be on November 15th. The governor just called it. Why? Anyone?
I don't have a clue. I mean, look, he's 60 days or so left as governor. Does he want one more last hurrah of a legislative session? I mean, at this point, I can only imagine that the two houses are going to come in, gavel, and leave.
Well, they might have some cleanup legislation on education spending, right? I mean, there might be some and some appointments. You could shove through some last-minute appointments. I believe that your former boss did that, if I'm not mistaken.
But the question is the Senate, which will then be controlled by Democrats, are they going to want to do that for David Paterson when Andrew Cuomo, presumably, will then be just a few weeks away from taking office? The other factor in this special session is, what does the governor-elect want to happen? Because he will be a major player in what happens or doesn't happen in that special session.
And with the Democrats controlling the Senate, if Andrew Cuomo doesn't help keep the Democrats in control of the Senate, building up to the election, what's going to be the dynamic then? Whenever there's a lame duck session, though, what are the two words that everybody thinks that nobody talks about?
Pay raises.
Bingo.
Yeah. Don't think Andrew Cuomo's going to trade for those. I'd be surprised. I mean, he's talking about the state being in a massive fiscal mess, and then he's going to trade pay raises. He's got in 2 years he can do it again.
But it's not Andrew Cuomo. At that point, it's still David Paterson's deal to make.
You really think David Paterson is going to do a deal with the legislature? What does he have out there that he still wants to get? Maybe a property tax cap, but I think he's going to leave that for Andrew Cuomo.
Or appointments, particularly if the Senate flips to Republican, and they know that they're now going to have a say in it. Maybe they make a deal on appointments. Okay, well, here's one thing that's clear. I'm not going to go out of business after January 1st. There's going to be a lot of things to cover. I'm very happy about that. No question about that.
Especially if my man Jimmy McMillan gets elected.
Yeah, I just got to say, your hands are cold, clearly.
It's chilly in here. But I thought he might have started a trend in punditry and in American politics. But my thing is, I don't believe the guy exists. I think he's an Eddie Murphy character. He's too interesting to be real. Okay, let me ask you this. Will the rent is too damn high party become an actual party in this election? I think he's going to get a lot of novelty votes. And now whether he's going to get 50,000 to stay on the ballot is another question. But I think he's going to get novelty votes. Let me just point out that last word to you, Steve. That in 2006, Jimmy McMillan, running on the Rent is Too Damn Hard party, was on the ballot and got about 10,000 votes. And now he's famous. There you go. We shall see. Thank you very much for joining us, Bob Bellafiore, Steve Greenberg, as always.